The engineers rolled their eyes. To them, relativity was abstract blackboard theory, not something that affected real-world hardware. They were wrong. There are two relativistic forces at play on a GPS satellite, and they fight each other. First, special relativity. Einstein proved that the faster an object moves, the slower time passes for it relative to a stationary observer. Since GPS satellites orbit at a blistering 14,000 kilometers per hour, their clocks should tick slower by about 7 microseconds per day compared to clocks on Earth. Second, general relativity. Einstein also proved that gravity warps time. Time moves slower the closer you are to a massive object. Because the satellites are 20,000 kilometers up, experiencing much weaker Earth gravity, their clock should tick faster by about 45 microseconds per day. When you combine these effects, 45 microseconds faster minus 7 microseconds slower, the net result is that satellite clocks should run 38 microseconds fast every single day. To an engineer in the 1970s, 38 microseconds sounded negligible. But remember the speed of light. If left uncorrected, that tiny time error would cause the GPS location accuracy to drift by 10 kilometers every single day. Within a week, the system will be militarily useless. The engineers were so skeptical of this academic theory that they refused to hard-code the correction. Instead, they built a hardware switch in the first satellite. One setting used Einstein's math, the other ignored it. They launched the satellite with the correction turned off. Within 24 hours, the data came back. The atomic clock began to drift exactly as Einstein's equations predicted. The engineers panicked and commanded the satellite to flip the switch. Einstein was right. Today, every GPS clock before launch is tuned to tick slightly slower on the ground, so that when it reaches orbit, the warping of space-time speeds it up to match our reality perfectly. By the 1980s, the system was operational, but the Cold War was at its peak, and the Pentagon had a new fear. They had built a perfect global navigation system. What if the Soviets used American satellites to guide their nuclear missiles to the White House? To prevent this, the military implemented a security feature called selective availability, or SA. Essentially, they deliberately corrupted the time signal broadcast to civilians. If you were a U.S. tank commander with a military receiver, you had a cryptographic key that unlocked perfect accuracy. But if you were a civilian hiker or a commercial pilot, your GPS could only tell you that you were somewhere within a 100-meter radius. It was a technological tease, amazing for hiking, useless for landing a plane or driving a car. Then came the tragedy that shook the world. In 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian airliner carrying 269 people, strayed off course due to a navigational error and entered Soviet airspace. A Soviet interceptor shot it down. There were no survivors. President Ronald Reagan was horrified. He realized that if the plane had access to accurate GPS, the tragedy would have been avoided. He announced that once GPS was fully operational, it would be available for the entire world to use for free, for the common good. It was a grand gesture, but the military didn't trust the world yet. They kept the selective availability switch turned on. Ironically, the moment that killed selective availability was an American war. During Operation Desert Storm in 1991, the U.S. Army moved so fast across the featureless Iraqi desert that they outran their supply of military GPS receivers. Desperate commanders called their families back in the States and begged them to buy civilian handheld GPS units at hunting stores and mail them to the front lines. Soldiers taped these civilian units to the dashboards of Humvees and the cockpits of helicopters. But because of selective availability, they were inaccurate. The Army realized with horror that they were actively blinding their own troops. It took another decade of lobbying, but in May 2000, President Bill Clinton ordered the military to turn off selective availability for good. Overnight, civilian accuracy jumped from the size of a football field to the size of a car. This moment was the big bang for the modern mobile internet. Suddenly, turn-by-turn navigation worked. Uber became possible. Tinder became possible. Tracking your pizza delivery became possible. The military had set out to guide missiles and accidentally created a multi-trillion-dollar global economy. While America celebrated this technological triumph, the rest of the world grew nervous. They realized a terrifying geopolitical truth. GPS is not a global utility. It is a weapons system owned, operated, and controlled by the United States Space Force. It is a gift, and gifts can be taken away. This reality hit home for China in 1990.